Hello friends, welcome to another session of today's in the series of political science and international relations. We have already finished the crash course on paper 1 और आज हम पेपर 2 यानी कि इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस और जिसका टॉपिक है कंपैरेटिव पॉलिटिकल एनालिसिस एंड इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स तो हम ये पढ़ेंगे। इसमें एक टॉपिक है जिसका नाम है अप्रोच टू द स्टडी ऑफ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस। ये टॉपिक है, इसमें हमको डिफरेंट जो थ्योरीज हैं इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन उसके बारे में वी विल गेट टू नो। सो मैं आपसे ये रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा जब आप पेपर 2 आप अपना स्टार्ट करना चाहेंगे तो स्टार्ट विद दिस टॉपिक, बिकॉज अगर आप विभिन्न जो डिफरेंट अप्रोचेस हैं इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस के अगर आप वो अच्छे से कंसेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी ला लेते हैं तो आपके लिए कंप्लीट पेपर ऑफ पेपर 2 दैट इज कंप्लीट पेपर 2 विल बिकम वेरी इजी। तो कोशिश इस बात की करें कि जब आप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं तो आप अप्रोचेस ऑफ स्टडी ऑफ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस पढ़ें। तो आइए हम ये टॉपिक देखते हैं। फर्स्ट विल स्टार्ट विद द अप्रोचेस टू द स्टडी ऑफ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस। सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हमको यहाँ जो कीवर्ड है अगर हम देखें इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस, मैं IR लिख रहा हूँ, मीन्स इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस। सो व्हाट इज इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस वी नीड टू नो बिकॉज दिस इज द कोर थीम हियर। सो इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस इज नथिंग बट द रिलेशंस among different nations, and it is said that the international relations, the relationship among different nations, when did this actually began? If we see history, there is an important in the medieval world history, there is an important treaty which is known as Treaty of Westphalia. Treaty of Westphalia. So with this the concept of nation state had come. Now what is nation state? A nation state is nothing but a territorially defined political entity. It is nothing but territorially defined political entity. So with respect to Treaty of Westphalia we saw the rise of emergence of nation state. Like today we have nation states such as Britain, we have nation state like France, Germany. So the concept of nation state came with Treaty of Westphalia. तो आइए अगर हम देखेंगे वेस्टफेलियन वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर उस तरह वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बेसिकली उस तरह का उस टाइम पे इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस कैसे हुआ करते हैं ये हम देखते हैं। सबसे पहले अगर हम इसकी फीचर्स बात करें, if we talk about the features of this Westphalian world order, the prime principal actors, the only principal actor here is state. जैसे कि अगर हम आज के टाइम की बात करें तो बहुत सारे नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स आपको मिलेंगे। नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स यानी कि NGO हो गया, आपकी जो इंटरनेशनल NGOs हैं, MNCs हो गया एक्सेट्रा। तो ये नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स हैं, लेकिन उस टाइम पे जो एक ही एक्टर था वो था स्टेट। उस टाइम पे नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स का कोई कंसेप्ट नहीं था। एंड हियर इन दिस वेस्टफेलियन वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स जो होती थी, इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स जो भी हुआ करती थी वो किसके बीच में हुआ करती थी? इट वॉज बिटवीन स्टेट एंड अदर स्टेट। बिकॉज ऑफ दिस रीजन. Now moving further, the concept with this Treaty of Westphalia, the concept like sovereignty and had come. Now what is sovereignty? Is an exclusive sphere of governing of a governing body without any undue interference from outside. If we see, there are various stages associated with this. The world order in the world order, there are various stages. Stage 1, if we talk about, stage 1 is nothing but Westphalian world order. Westphalian world order, where, and this order, basically this order continued from the Treaty of Westphalia till the First World War, where I have mentioned the features of this order, where the only actor was state, and the international politics was restricted towards state to state, one state to another state. Alright, so this was the stage 1. Now moving further, and here it is a very important thing to be noted that since the concept of nation state was confined, was to Europe only, and there was no concept of nation state in maybe in third world country, maybe in Asia, Asian subcontinent, or in Indian subcontinent, there was no such concept. So international politics was confined only till Europe, क्योंकि वहीं पे ही स्टेट्स हुआ करते थे, नेशन स्टेट्स हुआ करते थे. तो याद रखिए, जब भी हम स्टेट का यूज करते हैं इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में, हम जनरली स्टेट यानी कि कंट्री होता है, यानी कि और नेशन स्टेट. तो जैसे कि हम ये पहला स्टेज रहा. नाउ लेट अस सी व्हाट वाज द सेकंड स्टेज. द सेकंड स्टेज, इफ वी सी, इट वाज बिटवीन द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर and it was till the beginning of second world war. फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर की शुरुआत से लेके सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बिगिनिंग तक था. इस स्टेज में क्या हुआ कि द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स इट इंटरवीन्ड, and because of United States intervention, basically we know that the world war was fought in Europe. World wars were basically fought in Europe. However, USA had intervened in the world war, and that time the president was nothing but none other than Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson, what he said, because the aftermath of the war was such that there was lot of losses in terms of property, in terms of life, in terms of economy, everything. It had actually devastated. These world wars had devastated the economies. So Woodrow Wilson proposed a new world order. एक नया हम वर्ल्ड के रिलेशंस को नई दिशा देंगे, नया डायरेक्शन देंगे, न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर. So what is that new world order? Let us see. Woodrow Wilson gave something the concept of League of Nations. League of Nations. So what is this? League of Nations means there will be a league of the different nation states which are present, so that they can basically talk and resolve their conflicts. The battlefields should not be the place where the two parties should meet. Rather, they should sit on the table and they should resolve their disputes. Now moving further, these are the two important stages. If we talk about the third stage, अगर हम स्टेज थर्ड की बात करें, स्टेज थर्ड में जब वर्ल्ड वॉर के बिगिनिंग से लेकर वर्ल्ड वॉर के स्टेज टू वाज फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर टिल द स्टार्ट ऑफ सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर. हाउएवर द स्टेज थर्ड इज बिगिनिंग ऑफ द वर्ल्ड वॉर टिल द एंड ऑफ वर्ल्ड वॉर 2. What we realized that despite the fact that in the stage second itself हमने League of Nation बनाया था, लेकिन ये League of Nation because of this World War II it failed. It failed miserably. What basically happened then? The world order was again backed. The world order was again backed in the form of Westphalia. Why? Because in Westphalian world order, you only realize that state is the only actor, and the war, it believes in war. I mean, under Westphalian order, there is no concept of institutions like a League of Nations. There is no concept of United Nations, a supreme body that would basically overlook and try to resolve the disputes between the nations. So when the League of Nations itself had failed, this order in the third stage again went back to the Westphalian world order. Now moving further, let us see the stage 4 in the world order stages. The stage 4. Stage 4 is soon after the Second World War. Soon after the Second World War ended, the US president at that time, Roosevelt, now he proposed something called as another time a new world order. The first was proposed by Woodrow Wilson. The second was proposed by Roosevelt, New World Order. And इसमें he focused, he created an institution called as United Nations. United Nations, the institution of United Nations was basically created so that it removes the defect of League of Nations. At the same time, it ensures that there is further a way to basically that allows a country to come together and resolve their disputes amicably. So what was the new world order proposed by Roosevelt? Let us see. So he wanted, Mr. Roosevelt, the president, the former president, he wanted to create the hegemony, the superpowerness of United States, which means that USA to act as global policeman. USA would act as global policeman. There will be a supremacy of United States, and because of that, what we see is, apart from United Nations, there was creation of institutions like IMF, World Bank, and even if we see today, the Western countries definitely are relatively more dominant in these institutions. Now moving ahead, there is something called as a theory known as hegemonic stability theory. Hegemonic stability theory. Hegemonic stability theory. And this theory believes that in the international politics, in the international relations, the stability will be maintained only when there is one hegemon. Hegemon is a supreme, that is nothing but the hegemony of United States. If US will become the global policeman, it will ensure that the international relations become stable in nature. And what we realized that and USA was basically meant to see that rule of law is maintained in the world politics. Rule of law is maintained, that is the rules made by the conventions made by United Nations is protected in the world politics. What we realized that soon after the world got divided, soon after the World War II, the world basically got divided into two blocks. One is capitalist block, second is the other block that it got divided as communist block. And this capitalist block was under United States and this was under USSR, under the influence of USSR. With this, what actually happened was, soon after the World War, there was rapid phase of decolonization process. Decolonization. Example, you have India, you have other Southeast Asian countries, you have something African countries, where we could see that there was an increase in decolonization, and the number of nation states, basically this meant that the number of nation states got further increased. Now moving ahead, this also it is to be noted that when the world had got divided in two different blocks, this idea was further very much there was one more alternate that was established, that is known as non-alignment movement. So this two ideas got a serious challenge with respect to the non-alignment movement given by the Pandit Nehru. Oh, the last stage, let us talk about the last stage. In the last stages, if you talk about the stage 5, we will see that there was the end of the Cold War, which is nothing but, in the Cold War is nothing but where the world had got divided into different two blocks. We see with the disintegration of USSR in the 1990s, early 1990s, there was this end of Cold War in the world politics, and there was again a new world order, because end of Cold War means, and the disintegration of USSR means, the supremacy of liberalism, liberal ideas or liberalism, the supremacy of capitalist ideas or capitalism. So there was another new world order that had made, and along this new world order was basically based on it was in addition to the existing Westphalian world order. Westphalian world order, only nations, states are the only actors. States are only actors. Along with this, there was something called as a new world order had been made. And now, what is that new world order? We see the rise of number one, nation states. Nation states were already there. Regional bodies. A term is also known as regionalization of world politics. Now we have institutions like ASEAN, we have institutions like SAARC, we have institutions like RIMSTEC, this regional institution, we have something called as European Union, etc. So this was nothing but regionalization of world politics. So this was something new to this world order. There were many international bodies that had was established. Like we have seen how World Trade Organization was formed in the 1990s from GATT. Now, along with this, there were many again regional bodies. There was an emergence of non-state actors, and non-state actors plus they had something called as transnational linkage. Non-state actors includes number one, NGOs. If we talk about examples, I will give Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, World Wildlife Fund, etc. So these are the NGOs. Along with NGOs, you have something called as MNCs, multinational companies. They were under different countries. Along with this, there came a concept of terrorist. So they were basically non-state actors. So because of all these reasons, over and above the Westphalian world order, it is said that when these things had come, the world politics got transformed into something called as global politics. And this concept is more dynamic concept and pluralistic, which means that this world politics basically says that only states, it talks only about the states or countries, and it doesn't recognize other entities. Global politics recognizes nation states as well as these all different bodies and institutions. So this means that when I say world politics had got transformed into global politics, I meant to say that the world politics now became pluralistic in nature, and not only states but non-state actors also form a major important component. Now this is the brief overview of the global politics. Now we will come and study the different approaches with respect to the study of international relations. And please note that one question will definitely be asked in paper 2 from the any of the approaches, because this is a very static in nature. So please ensure that you cover you do not leave any topic here, and you cover it thoroughly, because one question is definitely sure will be asked in the different approaches. So if you see in the syllabus, the first is idealist approach, second is realist approach, third is Marxist approach, then we have functionalist approach, and last is systems theory. We will try and learn all the different theories of international relations one by one, and we will start with the realist theory of international politics. So basically, what is this realist theory of international politics? If you could recollect हम जब वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट के बारे में हम पढ़ रहे थे तो हमें ये पता था कि डिफरेंस बिटवीन आइडियलिज्म एंड रियलिज्म. देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज रियलिज्म, देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज idealism. Realism studies what is. It tries to give account what is. But idealism studies what should be, what ought to be. So ये different हमने पहले ही समझ लिया है. तो when it comes to realist theory of international politics, according to this theory, it says that it basically claims to offer the account of world politics or global politics that is realistic in nature. International politics, it tries to give an account of international politics that is realistic in nature, or scholars also call this that is hard-headed. And it is also to be noted that this realist theory of international politics, let us talk about some features of this. So what is this realist theory of international politics? Number one, it should be noted that it is the oldest theory of international politics, Along with this, it is based on the first stage world order. If you could recollect, I had just said the features of Westphalian world order. So what is here mean? It recognizes that there are only states. It doesn't recognize non-state actors. Secondly, it is also said that it is the most dominant theory. Now why do we call it as a dominant theory? Because if we see the politics of US, they follow something called as realpolitik. Their foreign policy is more realistic in nature. Although it appears that they are under the influence of liberalism, but however, if we see analyze the US foreign policy, it is basically meant for protecting their own national interest, and this realism has been a very dominant political theory in almost for all the countries, because ultimately for a nation state what really matters is that it wants to safeguard its national interest, that is its core interest. Secondly, if we see the next feature of this, we will see the basic assumptions. What this theory basically assumes. The first assumption is that, as I have just mentioned, that state is the only actor. Now moving ahead. Secondly, it says that the structure of international politics is basically anarchical. What do we mean by anarchical? He says that it basically means that since there are only state as actors, there is no one body or no role overall international body that is above state. That is, nothing is above state in the form of a supreme body, maybe in the form of United Nations, maybe in the form of some League of Nations. So there is nothing above state. States are the only actors here, and that's why structure of international politics is anarchical in nature. Secondly, the key assumption is that all that matters is national interests. Therefore, it means that no law, no ethics. A country will always prioritize to ensure that its national interests are safeguarded. There will be no influence of ethics, no influence of law in it. Moving ahead, secondly, it believes in a concept called as self-help. So another assumption is that it believes in some concept called self-help, which means that a country has to help itself. It cannot remain dependent on any other country. Maybe it cannot depend on any other large power or neighbor or any ally. Everything that matters at the end of the day is self-help for survival, and this is survival. Now moving further, this theory again assumes that power, international relations is all about power. It believes that power is nothing but, international relations is all about power, achieving power, and power is power here is not just means. Power is not just, and it is also end in itself. Power, to achieve the power, is the end of should be the end of the nation state. And they have described international politics basically nothing but struggle for power. Struggle for power. It's all about the struggle for power. Now they have come up with a very beautiful concept, which is also known as security dilemma. Now it's very important to know this concept. Now what is the security dilemma? Security dilemma is nothing but, first of all, it happens. Let us know why it happens. It happens because there is mutual, between the two countries there is mutual trust deficit, and also because of mutual suspicion. Third, it is nothing but dilemma of insecurity. Insecurity. We will see. We can say, I can give you an example. Let us say if these are two neighboring countries, one is India, another is Pakistan. What happens is that if these two countries have mutual trust deficit, mutual suspicion, if India, suppose if India intends to increase its security by acquiring, suppose let us say, nuclear weapons. If it wants to safeguard its security by acquiring the nuclear weapons, because we know that self-help is the best help. So when we try to acquire the nuclear weapons for our own security, for defense of the country, this will become a pain for this country, that is Pakistan, and they will have a dilemma of insecurity. A dilemma of insecurity. Now, if we see what is the security dilemma, security dilemma would mean if a country, neighboring country does something to bulk up its defense, the security dilemma involves two components. Number one is that interpretation, dilemma of interpretation. What should basically this country would interpret the action of this particular country. Number two, second is dilemma of response. So once we interpret something, now what should be the course of response? Should this particular country also increase its nuclear weapons, or should this country use some other platform? So with this we finish the concept of security dilemma. Now moving further, according to this realist theory of international politics, the international politics they have compared with something called as model of billiard ball. Now what is this? Let us see. They say that since state is the only actor here, there will be nations and there will be only few interaction. Let us say A, B, C. They have compared the international politics among the nations with the game of billiard and its ball. So there will be only the country would only meet whenever they want to basically resolve any dispute. There will be minimal interaction, and here the nations they keep colliding with other nation. They keep colliding, but they don't have any permanent friends or enemies. There are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. And here there is no international actor. which means that, again, as I mentioned, the international politics is nothing but anarchical in nature. Now, we could have set this concept prior to the globalization, where there was no concept of non-state actors. The only concept was of nation. If you talk about, let us say, 50 years back, 60 years back, 70 years back, the world politics was based on this one very model, and there was no prior to the formation of League of Nations, there was no no international actor like League of Nations. There was no such. So prior to that, around 1920s or before to the World War, this was the basically model of international politics, which is nothing but billiard balls of model. According to realist theory of international politics, they have given certain prescription, because there is a lot of mutual suspicion among the among the nations. There is a lot of trust deficit between the nations. So how do we ensure peace? और अगर आप देखेंगे assumption में ये कहते भी हैं कि they are following realist approach, they are hard headed at the same time कोई international authority नहीं है, there is no international authority to ensure stability. तो peace कैसे होगी फिर? उनके हिसाब से, realist के हिसाब से, they have given 3 important prescriptions. Number 1 is balance of power. Balance of power में ये होगा कि one country of some power will be balanced by another country. It will be checked by any other country. Like we can see this example when there was arms race in the Cold War was going on between United States of America and USSR. On the other hand, there was balancing of power continuously between the two nations. Secondly, the second important piece could be achieved by peace by deterrence. Under peace of deterrence, deterrence is nothing but the ability to deter. It's a psychological concept. It means that to tell the enemy that the cost of fight is more than its benefit. So how do we ensure peace by deterrence? The country A will become so much massive that there will be deterrence for country B. So therefore, it will not cause any kind of war, or it will ensure stability in the international politics. The third, they have given a concept called as preemptive wars. The principle is that destroy the existing capacities of a country to ensure that it doesn't become so much strong in future. That is, and this is very related to the Bush doctrine, George Bush's doctrine, wherein he had given something concept of a rogue state, which is nothing but maybe Iran, he had called Iraq, he had called North Korea. What it suggests is that it suggests the preemptive attack even before the enemy realizes or the rogue nation realizes, and destroy their existing capabilities which they are waiting to increase them in future. So this may also, according to realist के हिसाब से, it may also lead to peace in the longer term. Now moving ahead, if we talk about influence of this realist theory of international politics, the first one is definitely Kautilya. He had said one very important statement, is that international politics is like a jungle where the strength of lion prevails. So that was the statement given by Kautilya, and his Mandal Siddhant and his sixfold policy. Mandal Siddhant, the notion of the circles of king was very much relevant in realist theory of international politics. Ancient scholar Thucydides, he basically said that war is a permanent fact, and it is inherent, something that is inherent in the human nature. Thucydides. The spelling is Thucydides. Thucydides held that war is a permanent feature and it is based on human nature, and human nature itself is power seeking and self interest. So naturally the effect of human nature would also be in the states. Third is a very important person, Machiavelli. Machiavelli held that he is known for separating politics from ethics. He had basically said that politics is different from ethics, and the yardsticks of ethics cannot be used to judge a political action, and the only interest is nothing but national interest. The only interest is national interest. Lastly, a very again important person, Hobbes. Hobbes is known for contributing the concept of security dilemma. He had talked about the trust deficit, and he also held that international politics is nothing but struggle for power, and power, according to Hobbes, the guarantee of security is nothing but power. The guarantee of security is nothing but power. Therefore, he also believed that international politics is all about struggle for power. Now, we will see the important schools of realism. Second is scientific realism. Third, neoclassical realism. And the fourth type is liberal realism. If we see the important scholars, we must know. For here is Morgenthau, and here Kenneth Waltz. Neoclassical realism is given by Fareed Zakaria. Liberal realism is given by Hadley Bull. Now we will see one by one as to how these schools were from one another. The very important role of classical realism was given by Morgenthau, and he had written a book which is known as Politics Among Nations. And this book, the time when he had written, it was during the interwar period, and he had a lot of concern with respect to peace and stability, and he wanted to avoid the war. He wanted to create a new world order. At the same time, he intends to give certain policy guidelines to US foreign policy makers. He wanted to say US foreign policy makers that do not overlook certain fundamental laws of international politics, and he has called his principle as scientific in nature. He has come up with 6 principles of international politics. Now we will see what are those 6 principles. Yes, the first principle is that about human nature. First we will write it down and we will discuss it separately. Second is about national interest. Second is national interest. Third, it is about the nature of national interest. Nature of national interest. And the fourth is the concept of universal moral principle. The fifth is role of ideology. Sixth is the autonomous nature of politics. So these are the important 6 principles given by Morgenthau, and according to him, there is a direct impact on international politics विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू द ह्यूमन नेचर. ह्यूमन का नेचर जैसे होगा वैसे ही वही चीज़ इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स में भी रिफ्लेक्ट करेगी. इनके हिसाब से ह्यूमन बीइंग इज अ वेरी सेल्फ इंटरेस्टेड पर्सन एंड ऑल्सो पावर सीकिंग. सो इसी की वजह से इंटरनेशनल, क्योंकि इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स एक ह्यूमन के साइकोलॉजी पे बेस्ड होती है. इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स इज बेस्ड ऑन द ह्यूमन साइकोलॉजी एंड नॉट फिलोसफी. देयरफॉर state itself becomes interest seeker and power seeker. Now moving next, let us talk about the national interest. National interest इनके हिसाब से, because human being is self interested, so state also is self interested, and for state the primary importance is national interest, and this is something that is motivation for the foreign policy of a particular country. And Morgenthau also says that the motivation for the foreign policy makers cannot be international peace or it cannot be international law, but definitely national interest. Now we will talk about the nature of national interest. This, he said that the nature of national interest is very dynamic. It keeps changing. It is nothing but dynamic in nature. It keeps changing, and there are no permanent friends or enemies in the international politics. Now let us talk about the universal moral principle. He says that the universal moral principle does not apply to the international politics, and it has no significance. It is nothing but an example of window dressing. It conceals. Lastly, any ideology, according to Morgenthau, should not be misguided, and says that the role of ideology is more. With respect to universal moral principle, he says that it doesn't apply to the conduct of state, and we must not sacrifice end for the sake of means. And here he says that with respect to role of ideology is that it basically conceals reality, and it should be the guiding principle only in domestic spheres, and in international spheres the role of ideology it is not very significant. With respect to autonomous nature of politics, if we talk about autonomous nature of politics, according to Morgenthau, the politics is nothing but very much autonomous in nature, and at the same time it is uninspiring in nature. And he also says that international politics, like I mentioned, is nothing but struggle for power. With respect to peace, if we see his belief in with respect to the peace, he says that peace can be established by forming of number one, world government, but he says that it is a good idea, but it is nothing but a utopia, a hypothetical concept. The second way of establishing peace, according to Morgenthau, is nothing but diplomacy, which he supports in the international relations. Third, he believes and endorses that the concept deterrence and balance of power. Now moving ahead, there is also a lot of criticism with respect to Morgenthau's principle, because number one, he called his theory as scientific, and there are scholars who believe that you cannot claim a theory scientific based on the nature of human nature. You have to make something on the structure of international politics to claim your theory as scientific. Secondly, according to liberals, he does not keep any possibility of peace. He only sees he makes war as a permanent factor. Now moving ahead, we will see what is neo-realism as per or scientific realism. So basically, there was a threat. Threat to the school of realism, because the formation of European Union had happened, and there was a lot of peace amongst the various countries, and the emphasis of Kenneth Waltz was nothing but to establish that realism is a timeless wisdom, and he also wanted to change the basis of realism as it was established by Morgenthau. Morgenthau had relied on based on human nature to study the international politics. However, Kenneth Waltz, under the school of neo-realism, he uses the structure of international politics to come up with his own realist theory. Now, as I mentioned that the wisdom of realism was challenged because of the rise of regional bodies, peace treaties, etc. And his purpose was to establish that realism is nothing but timeless wisdom. Now he has given 6 concepts of his own realist philosophy. Now, first psychology. First is his concept is anarchy. The structure of international politics according to Kenneth Waltz is that it is anarchical in nature. It is anarchical in nature. That is, no international actor. Only states are the actors. Secondly, it is based on hierarchy, concept of hierarchy. Here he says that there is a difference between domestic politics and international politics. There is a difference between domestic and international politics, and here, since there is no concept of hierarchy, self-help is the best help. Hierarchy concept can be seen in domestic politics. Therefore, self-help is the best help according to Kenneth Waltz. In the third, he is given the capacity. Capacity is basically ensures how your national interest can be safeguarded. It is directly dependent on your capacity of the country. Now, what are he further also mentions the elements of power here, or elements of capacity. It is nothing but maybe natural resources, demography, economy, military, technology. They are nothing but elements of power. In the fifth, Kenneth Waltz gives us the distribution of power, and he says that this distribution of power actually basically varies country to country, and this depends on the capacity. This is something that is dependent on the capacity. Also, lastly, is talks about polarity. Polarity can be unipolar. The relation can be unipolar, bipolar, multipolar. One is unique, one is bi, two, and multipolar polarity is nothing but when there are multiple nation states. And according to Kenneth Waltz, bipolarity is more stability in international politics. Now, what is bipolarity? It's nothing but as similar to that of the international politics under the influence of Cold War, where the world was divided into two power blocks. On the one camp it was United States, on the other camp it was USSR. So world was bipolar that time. So according to Kenneth Waltz, international with respect to polarity, says that bipolarity is the most stable for international relations. Now, and the important seventh point is national interest, which is nothing but the core idea of realism. He has given something a concept of defensive realism. Defensive realism, and there is another scholar whose name is Mishima, and he has given the concept of offensive realism. So under defensive realism, you basically try to increase the defensing capability of your country. Here, power is but means. Here, power is for the sake of power. Power is for sake of power. Power is end in itself. Power is end. You attain power here to basically increase your defensive capabilities. You attain power for the sake of establishing more power. So these two differences, and defensive realism is given by Kenneth Waltz, and offensive realism concept given by Mishima. Now moving ahead, the third school is neoclassical realism. As I mentioned that the first school, which is given by Morgenthau, that is classical realism, focuses on human nature. Second school was scientific realism, which is given by Kenneth Waltz. It focuses on structure of international politics. The neoclassical realism is nothing but it says that the theory should be based on both human nature as well as structure of international politics. So both the factors are very important, and we have to see the continuity and the change in foreign policy. Now the last school, liberal realism, although the word liberal is there attached to this, but this is basically realist school. There are certain elements of liberalism into it, and it has been given by Hedley Bull. When the scholars of the other liberal school says that an international society is anarchical in nature, it means that there is no supreme international body. Secondly, anarchy prevails. So therefore, but Hedley Bull recognizes certain changes in the international politics, and he says that it is not anarchy completely, it is nothing but anarchical society. There is some changes, and he acknowledges and says that because of a lot of increasing people to people interaction, it has become anarchical society in nature.